Okay, so we're moving on to the second half of the intermediate paper from November 2018. We've covered all the E to C questions. We're moving on to the second half from marks 44 on. Question 10. A number is decreased by 12% of its value. This is done 3 times, each time decreasing the previous value by 12%. Circle the multiplier that you would use to find the value after the 3 decreases. I was really surprised to see this question come up because it's a numeracy question, it's a compound change question, but nevertheless, came up it did. So let's have a quick chat about it. When you're increasing or decreasing using a multiplier, you start with 100%. If you're increasing a quantity by 12%, you'd end up with 100% plus 12, 112%. If you're decreasing, you'd have 100% less 12, which is 88%. So because that's a decrease, I'm going to end up with 88% of my quantity if I do it once. If I do it twice, it doesn't double that decrease, it squares it. So it would be 88% to the power of 2, or 88% to the power of 3, or if it was 10 years, 88% to the power of 10. Now when we do that on a numeracy paper, we can just use the percent button. But with this one, they're asking you to match 88% to the power of 3 with the correct decimal version. So all you need to do is find the decimal version of 88% to the power of 3. There's only one of them, which is that one. So the key there is decrease. That makes you think, right, it's a multiplier, it's coming off 100%, so it's 88%. And there's only one there which looks anything like 88%. With percentage change, what you have to remember is that it's the amount of the change divided by whatever the original quantity was, and then to turn it into a percentage times 100. So in this case, it's an increase. It's going from 42.5 to 45.9. So the change, the amount of the change is 45.9 take away 42.5, 3.4, divided by the original. So it's gone from 42.5. And then times it by 100. So whether it's increase or decrease, just think of it as the change over the original. So it's 3.4 over 42.5 times 100. So it's an 8% change. So marks for that, just 1 mark for correctly circling the right multiplier. There's a method mark for your change over the original. And then there's actually 2 marks for that, if that's the way we chose to do it, and 1 mark for the answer. Venn diagrams. So this one now isn't a contextual Venn diagram like we have in the numeracy paper. It's a more mathsy one. Display the following information in a Venn diagram. The universal set are integers between 74 and 80 inclusive. So integers mean whole number. Inclusive means 74 and 80 are in the list as well. So let's get our list going first of all. 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80. So those are my numbers, and I've got to put those into my diagram. And the diagram is going to look like this, where the even numbers are going in A, and the multiples of 3 go in B. Now, if you don't know your 3 times table up as far as 80, I don't. You can check whether something's in the 3 times table by adding the digits together, and if that number's in the 3 times table, it's a multiple of 3. Okay, so 7 and 4 adds up to 11. 11's not in the 3 times table. That's not a multiple of 3, but it is even. So that's going in there. 75, add them together, I get 12. 12's in the 3 times table, so that's in the 3 times table, but it's odd. So it's going in there. 76, add those together, you get 13. It's even, but not in the 3 times table. 77, add those together, you get 14. That's not in the 3 times table, but it is odd. Sorry, hang on. Whoa. 77 isn't even and isn't in the 3 times table, so it sits outside. 7 and 8 is 15. 15 is in the 3 times table, so that's even and it's in the 3 times table. So it goes inside the overlap. 79 adds up to 16, not in the 3 times table, not even, goes on the outside, and 80 is even. So that's the complete list. So that's a really handy little thing to remember about checking if something's in the 3 times table. Add the digits together. If that number's in the 3 times table, so is the original. So 3 marks for that. 3 if you got them all right. 2 if you got 5 or 6 in the right place. And 1 if you've actually drawn a Venn diagram. So if you've drawn the box with 2 overlapping circles and labelled it A and B, they're giving you a mark for that. It's quite generous. Question 12. Right, I really don't think you're going to get this tomorrow because one of these was on the paper 1, but we'll work through it anyway. So the table below shows some values of y equals x squared plus 4x minus 1 for values of x from -5 to 2. Complete the table by finding the value for x is -2, x is 2. Now, when we do this on a paper 1, I always suggest you plot the points first of all so that you get a feel for where they're going. But because we can use a calculator, it's much easier. All we're doing is replacing the x, first of all, with -2. Remember what I say about when you're replacing a letter with a value, put it in brackets. So this becomes open bracket. The negative is not the subtract button, it's the one my pen is pointing at. It's that one there. Close bracket squared plus 4 -2 take 1. So it's pretty much what's up there. The only difference is I've got numbers. So that's -5. And then we do the same thing again for +2. So open bracket 2 squared plus 4 to take 1. 11. So that's much easier when you can use a calculator. Then we need to plot those coordinates. So the x coordinate is -5, the y coordinate is 4, x coordinate -5, y coordinate 4, -4, -1. Make sure you get the scale right, so 1 is going to be halfway there. This y-axis is going up in 2s. So -4, -1, -3, -4, -2, -5, -1, -4, 0, -1, 1, 4, to 11. So those are all the points. We then have to draw a curve through them. When you're drawing a curve, it's easier to have your wrist, whether you're left or right-handed, left-handed like me, on the inside of the curve, so your wrist acts as a bit of a compass. So there's your curve. What do we want to do next? So we've done part A, we've done part B. Part C, draw the line y equals 2 on the graph paper. The most common wrong thing to do there is draw your line y equals 2 there. Because the y-axis stands vertical, people think the line y equals is vertical as well. But the line y equals 2 is the one that goes through the y coordinate 2. So it's actually a horizontal line. And bear that in mind as well if you get a transformation question with a reflection. If the line y equals 2 is where it's reflected, that would be a mirror. So there's the line y equals 2. Write down the values of x where the line y equals 2 cuts the curve. So what they want to know now is what is the x coordinate there, and what is the x coordinate there. So that one is minus 4.7. And that one is 0.6 on my graph. And theirs is minus 4.65 and 0.65. How they get it down to 2 decimal places is a bit wrong, but they allow you that degree of movement anyway. So those would be fine. So marks for that question are 1 mark for each of -5 and 11. Then over here you get a P mark for plotting the points, and a C mark for a nice curve going through them. Then a line mark for the line in the correct place. Sorry, line mark there for the line y equals 2, and then a mark for the 2 correct values that you've written down off it. Question 13. It's a horrible question. Jonathan writes a whole number on the card. The number is between 55 and 83 inclusive. So my answer is going to be 57 or 63. It's going to be some number between 55 and 83. Okay? The square root of the number is greater than 8 but less than 9. Now the square root is the opposite of squaring. So if the square root is between 8 and 9, if you square 8, you get 64, and if you square 9, you get 81. So my number is now narrowed down, it's between 64 and 81. Okay, so I can knock out 55, 56, 83 and 82. The highest common factor of 49 and the number is 7. So what that means is this number is in the 7 times table because it's got 7 is a factor of it. So a really confusing line of maths there. You don't need to know about the 49. They could have just said 7 is a factor. Okay? So, it's in the 7 times table, and it's between 65 and 80. So going through my 7 times table, 9 sevens are 63, it's not that. 10 sevens are 70, 11 sevens are 77, and then it's 84. So my number is either 70 or 77. Three-fifths of the number is a multiple of 6. So 3/5 of 70 is 42. 42 is a multiple of 6. Just check the other one. 3/5 of 77. Is a decimal, so that's not going to be a multiple of 6. So my number is 70. So it's just a matter of trying to, most people in the intermediate tier would have been lost at that second bullet point, knowing that, okay, so if the square root is between 8 and 9, square those to get the original number, means it's between 64 and 81. It's not a nice question. There's 3 marks if you got 70, 2 marks if you ended up with 77 or 80, and 1 mark for any number you chose between 65 and 79. So there were marks you could have picked up by guessing the right number. That's horrible. Try an improvement. A solution of the equation x cubed minus 13x equals 107 lies between 5 and 6. And we're looking for a solution correct to 1 decimal place. Okay? So I'm looking for 5.0, 5.1, 5.2, something like that as my answer. So we go searching for it, and they tell us our starting point, and know that I'm looking for a value between 5 and 6, so I go halfway between to start off, because that eliminates half my possible answers. So halfway is 5.5. I'm going into that formula, I'm replacing a number, a letter with a number, so it's going in a bracket. And I work out what that is. I evaluate that. Careful that this is cubed, not squared, which is a different button. So I've rewritten x cubed minus 13x with 5.5. That is 94.875. I'm looking for 107, so that's too small. Now because I know that's too small, there's no point me trying any number between 5 and 5.5. They'll all be too small. So by doing that, I've knocked out half my possible answers. So now I'm going searching again. You could go methodically, well, let's try 5.6 next. Or you could jump, doesn't matter. You're unlikely to run out of time. So if you don't want to rewrite all of that in, you can use your cursor keys and move down into that and just change that 5.5, press delete, 5.6, delete 5.6. So that's 102.816. That's still too small. So I'll go 5.7. $111, too big. So that's great. I'm looking for my answer to 1 decimal place. So I've got to keep searching until I've got it between 2 consecutive 1 decimal place numbers. There's no point me trying for 5.8 because 5.8 is going to be too big as well. So this is telling me that 5.6 and 5.7, one of those is going to be my answer. All I need to do to decide is go halfway between them. That's like what's halfway between £5.60 and £5.70. £5.65. So halfway between is 5.65. I put that in. And see what that gives me. So now I will start from scratch. 5.65 cubed. Take 13 bracket 5.65 equals 106.91 blah blah blah. It's too small. Now if 5.65 is too small, that means all of this is too small, which means my answer is somewhere between 5.65 and 5.7. And any number between there and there, when you round it to 1 decimal place, is going to round to 5.7. So because that's too small, 5.7 is my answer. If that had been too big, it would have knocked all this out, and that one would have been my answer. And that's all you've got to learn, is that extra little step to go halfway between them again once you've got them consecutive. So for that, there's 1 mark for any value being substituted in, 1 mark for a second one, which is closer, and then there's a method which is once you've got it consecutive, going halfway between, and your final answer mark there. So that really should be 4 easy marks in that second half of the paper. Then we come to straight lines, which we haven't done. Well, we've done here. So this is really now testing higher tier work. What is the gradient of the straight line with the equation 6y equals 3x plus 7? The equation of a straight line, when you learn it, and you may have met it back in year 10 with different teachers, is given in that form. It's a rule that links the y coordinate and the x coordinate. So you put a different value of x in, work it out, and give you the value of y. The number that's in front of the x tells you how steep that line is going to be. It's called the gradient. And the value that isn't attached to the x tells you where it's going to cross the y-axis. So when you look at what we're given here, it hasn't been given in the form y equals. It's given in the form 6y, 6 times y. So to get it into that format, I've got to divide by 6. And I then have to divide everything by 6. The gradient is then 3 over 6. Well, 3 over 6 is the same as a half. Don't worry about it. What is the value of y at the point where the line 5x plus y plus 3 equals 0 crosses the y-axis? Well, to get that in the form y equals, I've got to take 5x off both sides, and I've got to take 3 off both sides, so I'd end up with that. Where does it cross the y-axis? There, -3. What are the coordinates of the point where the lines with the equations x plus y equals 7 and x minus y equals 3 intersect? So with coordinates, the x coordinate is the first digit and the y coordinate is the second digit. If the lines intersect, they have to be the same, they have to match in both equations. So x plus y is 7, so 4 plus 3 is 7. But x take away y, 4 take away 3, is 1. So that one doesn't fit both equations. There's no way they'll add together to give 7. Those two add to give 7, 5 plus 2. And if you do 5 take away 2, you get 3. So that pair of numbers works in that equation and that equation, so they intersect. So if you get, I would say there, part C, even if you can't remember A and B, you can have a play around with the equations they give you to see if the coordinates they give you match. So only 3 marks there, so it's one of those things that you could take a week to practice in class, and you know, it's only going to be a few marks on an intermediate tier. Right, well, we're getting towards the end, and we haven't had any trig, and we haven't had any Pythag. So they must be on their way. The perimeter of a square is 76.4 meters. So, I know I got a square. I know the perimeter is the distance all the way around. And if it's a square, all those sides are the same length. So each side will be 76.4 divided by 4. (19.1 meters). Calculate the length of its diagonal. You must show all your working. It's a square, so I know it's got a right angle. I've created a diagonal which has given me a right angle triangle, and I know that the sides of it are 19.1. I know I'm in the second half of the paper, and trig hasn't come up yet, and neither has Pythag. Usually Pythag comes up first, not always. But it's more likely to be that, and it's not asking me to find any angles, and I don't know any angles, so it's not trig, so it's Pythag. For Pythag, I know I've got to square my sides. So when I square 19.1, I get 364.81. Then I've got to decide whether to add or subtract. If I subtracted here, I end up with 0, so clearly something would be wrong there. But you add if you're trying to find the longest side, and the longest side is pointed at by the right angle. So I'm trying to find the longest side, so I add. Or in this case, double. So when I add those together, I get 729.62. But then to go from squares back to sides, I need to shrink down the opposite of squaring, which is square root. So 27.0 meters. So that's question 16. So there's 1 mark for turning the perimeter into the length of the side, 1 mark for squaring and adding, 1 mark for square rooting, and 1 mark for your final answer. So So you should really be expecting to deal with that tomorrow. Probability tree, we had one in the paper one, so I don't think this is going to come up, but we'll work through it anyway. So Alwina regularly travels from Anglesey to Cardiff to attend meetings. For each meeting, she chooses one of 3 ways to travel, by plane, train or car. The probability of a meeting being held on a Saturday is 0.08. The probability she travels by plane is 0.15, train 0.45. Her decision on how to travel is independent on the day on which the meeting is held. Complete the following tree diagram. So we know that the branches have to add up to 1. So if we do 1 minus 0.08, we get 0.92. And these have to add up to 1 as well. So if I take 0.45 and 0.15 off, that ends up as 0.4. And then those probabilities repeat on the bottom branches. A meeting is chosen at random. Calculate the probability that the meeting is held on a Saturday and that Alwena travels by plane or by car. So Saturday, plane, or Saturday, car. And means you multiply, or means you add. So it's either going to be Saturday and plane, Saturday and plane, or means add Saturday and car. As long as you're using brackets, all of that can go in the calculators together. So open bracket 0.08 times 0.15 or 0.08 times, so 0.044. Marks for that, 6 marks, nice. So 0.92 gets you a mark, 0.4 gets you a mark, and repeating the probabilities there gets you a mark. And then you get a mark if you've got either of those, so you're showing that you're multiplying, and then a method mark for adding them together and getting your overall probability. As I said, I don't think you can get one of those anyway because you had one last week or week before last. And then the final question. Oh, it's got right angle triangles. I'll do this with you tomorrow, right at the start of the exam, just to make sure your calculator is in the right place. Type in sine 30 and make sure it gives you a half. If it doesn't give you a half, then your calculator is in the wrong form, the wrong mode, so we need to change the mode. Okay. Diagram below shows 2 right angle triangles, ABC and APQ. Calculate the size of angle X. So angle X is in the top one, so if you don't like having tangled up triangles, just work with the triangle we need. That's what they want us to find. And they're giving me that that is 8.2 and that that is 6.4. We need to label our sides. We know the hypotenuse is pointed at by the right angle box, so that's my H. The opposite is always opposite either the angle I'm trying to find or the angle I need to use, and what's left is the adjacent. So then I'm going back to my triangles to decide which ones to choose. So I have to have O and A, because those are the two sides I know. O and H, no use. A and H, no use. O and A is the tan one. So let's write that down so I can pull that away. When you're trying to find the angle, it's the T or the C or the S you cover up. So tan of the angle is opposite over adjacent. So tan of X is 6.4 over 8.2. And because I'm trying to find the angle, I have to get the X on its own. I have to do the opposite of tanning, which is, if you look on your calculator, if you look above the tan button, it's written tan minus 1. We can type that into the calculator exactly as we see it. Shift tan gives you the tan minus 1. Fraction button. And remember to close the bracket. So 37.97 rounds to 38 degrees. Then they want us to calculate the length of AQ. Well, AQ is a different triangle. I know that that is 7.9. I want to find that. I need to have an angle inside that triangle in order to be able to work that out. Now if you go back and look at what we've got up here, we've got another box there. So that's telling me that that angle is 90 degrees. I've worked out this angle is 38. So that angle there is going to be 38 from 90. So that angle there is going to be 90, take away 38. So that's 52 degrees. Okay, so I know now a side and an angle, and I'm missing something. I'm going to rename my sides. So this time I'm trying to find the hype, and I know the op, and I don't know anything about the adjacent. Coming back to my choices, I have to have the H in it, because it's what I'm trying to find. I have to have the O in it, because I know it. So I'm looking for the one that links O and H, which is sine. So this time, that's the triangle I'm going to use. Cover up what you're trying to find, which is H, so it's opposite over sine. So AQ is opposite, which is 7.9, over sine of 52. Which we can type in exactly as we see it. Fraction, 7.9. On the bottom, sine 52, close the bracket, looks the same, so 10 centimeters. Job done. Marks. In green. Method mark for that line, tan x is 6.4 over 8.2. An answer mark, or mark for showing the tan minus 1, and then one for 38 degrees. And in part B, 1 mark for finding the 52 degrees by taking away from 90, 2 marks for that, and 1 mark for that. And that is that. Okay, so that's the last one. Oh.